for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Welcome to the show. I'm Andrew Zimmel, your host as always, breaking down the 49ers on this one, talking to Patrick Holloway from Niners Nation about what we should expect from the 49ers this Sunday against the Kansas City Chiefs. We break down the X's and O's, Nick Bosa, Jimmy Garoppolo, the run game, Kyle Shanahan. We go into the entire thing. If you are getting ready for Super Bowl Sunday, this is the perfect podcast for you. Here he is. All right, on the phone line right now from Niners Nation, the SBNation site, is Patrick Holloway. Patrick, can you hear me?
I sure can.
All right. So the last time we chatted was over a year ago, and a well-known wide receiver named Antonio Brown was rumored to be traded to the 49ers. Now, over a year later, everything has changed, I think, for Antonio Brown and for your Niners. How are you feeling right now going into the Super Bowl?
I feel pretty good that they did not get involved in that Antonio Brown business, given everything that's happened, both from a play standpoint and just the headaches that he had off the field. But if you're looking at the Niners as far as a team right now in the Super Bowl, not even I predicted they would go 13-3 and win in the postseason the way they did. I had them going 9-7, maybe getting through a wild card round and stopping at the divisional round. I didn't even see this coming. So it's definitely surprising, but it's also something that is very, very impressive when you look at what Kyle Shanahan did. Not only did he take a team to the Super Bowl, but he's also built this team. This was a team that was left in a decimated roster under Trent Baalke. And for a coach to come in and rebuild the roster and then take it this far, that is something that is even more impressive than, say, Jim Harbaugh, who just walks in and takes the team to the NFC Championship game his first year. Because building a team and then taking them there, those are two very different things and two very, very difficult things, and Kyle Shanahan did them both.
Now, it's funny because a year ago they were 4-12, and then they get Nick Bosa and Jimmy Garoppolo plays a full season. And before we get into the X's and O's and what we expect from Shanahan in this game and everything, I just wanted to ask you, who has a bigger impact in the turnaround, Garoppolo or Nick Bosa?
I would actually have to say neither. I think that the defense as a whole has complemented Bosa. Now, don't get me wrong, Bosa is a force on the field, and he's going to have a very long and lustrous career here in the NFL. But I think to put it on the shoulders of either of those players is really, it'd be a little bit ill-advised, because the 49ers, I think that as a team unit, they've collectively have done so well. And I think Bosa benefits a lot from the defense being able to have D Ford on the other side as a pass rusher, having DeForest Buckner in there on the interior. And so just him alone, yes, he's great. But I think to say it's all him, I think that's a little inaccurate. And for Garoppolo, yeah, Garoppolo's great, but at the same time, he's also benefited from an insane running game and a great group of running backs. You saw Raheem Mostert most recently, but Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida, all of them have contributed, which helped him with the play action, clears things up for him to throw it. So I can't really just say just Garoppolo, but he is a great quarterback. I just think, he hasn't completely changed it. Now, of course, we can come back and say, well, when he wasn't there, the 49ers started losing. But Garoppolo definitely benefited from great pieces around him.
It's funny because I want to talk about Garoppolo. He comes in from that New England system. I think everybody anticipated him to be a good quarterback. I don't know if we anticipated him to be able to throw the ball and win a game the way that he did against the Packers in the NFC Championship game. But throughout the entire season, I had been saying to people, hey, I think this is a top 10 quarterback. I think this guy might be, I don't think he's better than Watson or Wilson or Mahomes or Lamar, but I thought that he was like the 5th or 7th, somewhere in between there, quarterback in the league. Watching him week in and week out, does that feel like kind of the right area for him, a top 10 quarterback?
I totally agree. I definitely think he's a top 10 quarterback as well. And I could agree with that statement. Watson or Mahomes, no, he's not there. And will he get there? He totally could. But I think what we forget is, one, this is his very first full starting season in the league. And any quarterback is going to have to deal with those things. And Mahomes and Watson both have already done that. The other thing is, I point out when they say, well, he's not very, he doesn't do enough. If you look at the stats of Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers back when they were in this point of their career, their first or second year, their stats are very, very similar. And Brady in particular, he was not a quarterback that was going to, throw 500 yards every single game and, just dominate. He was the guy that was going to, get you down the field so you could kick a field goal, and that's how you can win football games. And that's kind of what Garoppolo is. And I think from what I've seen is, he's only going to get better. And if this is what you're getting from his first season, and I do agree, his first season, he is a top 10 quarterback. But if that's his first season, just think what he's going to do in year 3 or year 4 when he's really got that consistency around him in that Shanahan offense.
It's been incredible, I think. And I was talking to another writer about the juxtaposition between Garoppolo and Shanahan and Sean McVay and Jared Goff, and how I thought that Jared Goff last year had to be bailed out a lot by McVay, whereas Garoppolo, I think Kyle Shanahan, for the most part, from what I've seen, can trust him to run the offense, that he doesn't need to be in his ear every single play of every single down and every single drive to be telling him, hey, this is the plays that we need to run. Whereas I thought Jared Goff, and it got exposed in the Super Bowl last year and all season this year, was that he needs to have McVay in his head, where I think Garoppolo can kind of run an offense a little bit better.
Absolutely. If you look at Goff, you watch him, when everything's clicking, when the receivers are running their routes correctly, and when the pocket can hold up, Goff is very good. I mean, he's great in that system, and that's how he got the numbers. When everything's going as according to plan, Goff's great. But when it comes to things breaking down and Goff has to improvise, or they're taking those crucial reads away, that's when Goff starts to struggle. Now, Garoppolo, on the other hand, he's thrown some picks when things go down, but also he's done some things that you just can't coach. I mean, those 2 3rd and 16 drives against the Rams, that is a great example of something that, Kyle Shanahan didn't whisper in his ear to do it. Garoppolo saw 2 openings and took them. And he's been doing a lot of those things all year when things do break down. Another good example is Kyle Juszczyk when the pocket broke down against New Orleans. Garoppolo rolled out and just chucked it to Juszczyk, who unfortunately got concussed on that play, or they thought he was concussed. He came back in, I think. But the point, Garoppolo can make those plays, and Goff doesn't make those very much. Goff has to sit there, and it has to go very well as designed. And once it goes to, okay, make a play, it just seems like Goff becomes less ineffective, whereas Garoppolo can sometimes make something out of nothing more often than not.
So let's talk a little bit about the playoffs so far for the 49ers. Which game do you think told you a better story? Or which game do you think is going to portray the 49ers in the game that they're going to play this Sunday against the Chiefs? Was it the Vikings game where they were able to shut down the run and just drive the ball down the Vikings' throat? A Vikings defense that was one of the best in the league this year and was really clicking going into that game, being able to just run the ball down their throat? Or do you anticipate a game like the Packers game where the defense was just so dominant that they were able to stifle out anything Green Bay was going to do, and then you kind of just got the lead and was able to just roll out and just ride it out?
I would think the Packers game would be the one, and I take it to the quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is definitely not near as mobile now as he was, let's say, 3 or 4 years ago, but he definitely can move around a little bit, and that didn't really work out because he still kind of stood there like a statue. But Kirk Cousins just stood there. He didn't move around. He didn't know that he had Dee Ford and Nick Bosa and, well, even Solomon Thomas, which was strange, coming for him. He just stood there and took sacks, and Rodgers was out a little bit. And not only that, when the 49ers started to got their lead in the first half, and I know a lot of people disagree with me here, but when Rodgers started making his comeback and scored 3 touchdowns in the second half, I know that some people, not many, were a little concerned because this is Aaron Rodgers. He's made a career doing this. And I look at that and I say, this is something the Chiefs can do. The Niners can probably get up, and then the Chiefs can start making slow little comebacks. But the question is, can they overcome a deficit that's as large as the 49ers had against the Packers? But I think that'd be a good preview of what the 49ers can do. And furthermore, the Chiefs' run defense, it's not that good. And so I think you'll see the Niners being able to run the ball. But on the flip side, I do think the Chiefs' offense will be far more competent than the Packers will, and I don't think it's going to get to as big of a deficit as been against Green Bay. But I do think it's a good indication that Mahomes can do kind of those little strike things to get himself back into the game if that were to happen, which I don't think will happen. And the 49ers defense can be put in those situations where a team can score some successive touchdowns on them. Do I think that a situation like that can happen? It definitely could. And so I think the Packers is a very indicator of what can happen, especially since Rodgers is a little bit more mobile and Mahomes, well, we know how mobile he can be when he's rushed. The Vikings game, yeah, they're a great defense, but when you look at what the defensive line was up against and Kirk Cousins, I don't think that's a good indicator. And the Vikings defense on the other side of the ball, I would not – I wouldn't put them in the class of KC.
I agree with that. So let's talk about the weakest link, I think, on the 49ers defense, and that's the secondary. Because I love them up front. The linebackers, I think, are going to do a really good job against Kelsey. It's that secondary. And I love Richard Sherman. He's been one of my favorite athletes since he's really come on the scene out of Stanford. But I don't know if he's going to be able to keep up with some of the guys on the Chiefs team. Does that worry you at all?
Well, considering it's the number one pass defense, I keep telling myself that. But at the same time, when you look at what's coming at them, that is where my concerns would come. I mean, they can talk about how they're the number one pass defense in the league all they want, but when you, just like you said, when you have Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, and Travis Kelce coming at you, those guys can do a track meet. That does worry me a little bit. But at the same time, you know, the moment you count out Richard Sherman, he turns around and he makes plays. And I have thrown, as a 49ers fan who's looked at him as a Seahawk, I have thrown dirt on Richard Sherman before, and I have been made look very, very badly when I do it. And I'm not going to do that here. I'm actually going to say I think Sherman is not going to be a concern here. I think they'll be good. The question will be where they move those Vikings pass catchers around, especially when you got the other side, Emmanuel Mosley, who he's come out, he's replaced Ahkello Witherspoon, and he's looked really good doing it. But if they move Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins around and put Mosley on those guys, that could be the weakest link, and it's how will Mosley do against more superior talent, because Mosley was up against those wide receivers in Green Bay, and anyone not named Devontae Adams, I'm not really going to put my trust into as far as catching the ball. And this is a much better wide receiver unit than what Green Bay had, and it's going to be what can Emmanuel Mosley do rather than what Richard Sherman can do.
It really feels to me that 49ers, they played the Packers, which I think is like a B or C rate version of the Chiefs, in that the Chiefs don't have a very good run game, I don't think. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to run the ball very well against the 49ers. But they've got a much better quarterback, I think, in Mahomes. And I think they have a much better receiving core than Green Bay did. So I do think the NFC Championship game, for the first time in a long time, is a real good kind of benchmark for where this team is going into the Super Bowl. A lot of years, like last year, Rams-Saints, I knew that there was no way the Patriots were going to let a shootout occur. So I thought the NFC Championship game was kind of a cotton candy game to go play a superior AFC team. This year, I think that the NFC Championship game was actually a good test for whatever team was going to come out and was going to play the Chiefs.
I totally agree, and it's definitely that. But in this case, though, I can tell you right now, I don't know what this Super Bowl is going to be. Like you said, you're wondering there's no way a Super Bowl is going to shootout was going to happen with the Patriots. I can't sit here and say with the Niners Chiefs, I can't say there's no way this is not going to happen. There are so many variables between these two teams, and they're both so good. I just don't know how this game will shape up. I've looked, and there's a chance this could be a low-scoring game. There's a chance this could be over 50. I just don't know what's going to happen, and it's just because both these two teams can be explosive when they feel like. The Niners offense is, I think, very overlooked in the sense when you look at what Pat Mahomes has done, the Niners can still put up points. And so it's just like, and when you got the defense, and then you look at other things, well, the defense can do really well, but, running quarterbacks have given the 49ers fits when you look at what the Arizona Cardinals did. So, or Russell Wilson with the Seahawks. So it's really, I can't sit there and say this team's not going to allow this or this is going to happen here because there's just so much going on. I can't predict how this game's going to go.
No, and I agree with you. I understand where you're coming from with that. So the big thing everybody continues to talk about, at least where I'm from in Austin, is the zone run that the 49ers have figured out. It's the Kyle Shanahan handed down from Mike Shanahan, the system of being able to run the ball, the kind of the way that Mike did it in Denver with those championship teams. Tell me a little bit about this run game that the 49ers have and the kind of the scheme and the system they have built this season.
It's a lot of shifting. It's a lot of misdirection. It's also a lot of basically, if you are playing on offense, you better know how to block. If you're a wide receiver, you might be catching balls, but you also might be blocking. And it's about not just, it's about getting your blockers to go in just the right direction. But unlike other schemes where they go a direction and the defense is supposed to anticipate that, somebody can just go the other way. And the other thing is with this zone run scheme is that Kyle Shanahan has successfully made positionless football where when you substitute people in for the offense, the defense is going to sit there and say, okay, well, they're going to run an obvious passing down or they're going to run an obvious running down or this is obviously this and they'll get their personnel. But the 49ers, they can do anything from any of their personnel formations. And it's not really a trick play. They've made sure that everybody, when they substitute in, that it's not an obvious change in what they're going to do schematically. So if they line up in whatever set they do, the defense just doesn't know what's coming, and it keeps them honest. And the thing is with the Shanahan, the moment you think you know what he's going to do, he's going to find something else and take away your best weapon on the other side of the ball.
So I think that this is the battle of the tight ends too, where I think the crown that Rob Gronkowski kind of left when he retired, it was up for grabs, I think, between Ertz, Kittle, and Kelsey, and then Kyle Rudolph is in the room, but he's not getting the crown. Kittle versus
he's little kid table.
Yeah, he's in the room, but he's not at the table. Kittle versus
cute.
Kelsey.
It's cute.
I think that if he was in a better system, if he was like the primary ball catcher in Jacksonville or somewhere where he could like really stand out, I think that he'd have a better career. I like Kyle Rudolph, but he's not on the same level as Kittle or Kelsey. What do you anticipate from this matchup, just from the tight end standpoint?
I think from a tight end standpoint, you're going to see Kelsey probably get more yards than Kittle. And that's just because Kelsey is more of a pass-catching tight end. I'm not saying he's not a blocking tight end. I'm just saying that they use him a lot more to catch him. You'll probably see him in the red zone, get a touchdown. He's just lethal in that area. I think from Kittle, you're going to see a lot of the run game be successful because of Kittle's blocks. They'll probably chuck him a few balls, and he'll probably get his due with the receiving as well. But Kittle prides himself on running the ball, and the running game goes through Kittle. And so I think you'll be seeing a lot more of the run game being complemented by Kittle, whereas on the Chiefs end, you'll probably see a little bit more of the passing game coming courtesy of Travis Kelce. And it'll be interesting in that aspect with Kelce. How will Fred Warner, who's the 49ers linebacker, how can he stop Travis Kelce? Because if Kelce can have his way, that could be a huge problem for the 49ers.
I don't think anybody can stop Kelce. I think that you just need to neutralize the type of plays that he can make. If you can keep him from getting 5 or 6 yards every time he catches the ball, or yards after catch, that I think is the way that you neutralize Kelce.
I absolutely agree. With the way the 49ers play that kind of zone scheme, I think that's meant to. Those are basically meant to make sure that you get popped when you catch the ball.
Yeah, and I think that Kelsey's probably, if we did a list of the corniest players in the league, I think that he's on that list. Of all the players on the Chiefs team, I like the Chiefs. I think they're a really good team. He's the one guy I never have found a way to root for. Something about him I don't like. Kittle, on the other hand, feels like the exact type of tight end that you want when you go to a lab and create a tight end. Like feels like the perfect tight end for 2020.
Even Rob Gronkowski came out today and said he sees himself in George Kittle. He just said, that guy reminds me of me at that age. The thing about Kittle, and when you're talking about rooting for me, if you look at the personal aspect, it's hard to not root against a guy like Kittle. The fans love him. His media presence is unparalleled. He's a likable guy, and it's likable, and it's not, there's a lot of people when you see that personality Kittle puts out that you look at, you can kind of detect a little bit of a fakeness of it, or maybe they're acting. Brian Wilson, who was a pitcher for the San Francisco Giants, and I believe went to the he went elsewhere. I think it was at the Dodgers. Brian Wilson had a very larger-than-life personality, but there was always this sort of thing that it was kind of like he was trying too hard, at least in my opinion. And when you look at Kittle, he genuinely does that to the point where it's likable, and it's just hard to not root for that guy with what he's done. The guy loves football. The guy loves what he does. He loves professional wrestling, and just the stories you hear about him make you like him even more. I've started George Kittle Facts. I've just replaced Chuck Norris's name with George Kittle's, and it just seems more than adequate. But I see what you mean there, and I think with Kittle, he's just the heart and soul of that team, and he doesn't take it too far where it just you're tired of him being shoved down your throat. You get just the right amount of Kittle to where you can root for the guy.
Like I said, I have the Chiefs winning this game. They're 1.5-point favorites, but I think that this is going to be a blood match between these two teams. What do you anticipate from the Super Bowl?
I am picking the 49ers. I went back and forth on this. I am picking them. And the reason I'm picking them is because if you take away Pat Mahomes, if you take away Kelsey, and you take away Tyreek Hill, that it becomes a team that, when the nucleus is gone, there's not much around there. I know there's Frank Clark. I know there's Sammy Watkins. I know that there's other people, but you just got those pieces. And I think the 49ers are a much more complete team. And it reminds me a lot, I think Trent Dilfer made this comparison today too. It reminds me a lot of the 49ers when they were in the Super Bowl against the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins had this great quarterback in Dan Marino, and that didn't turn out too well for the Dolphins. And then they turned around, they played a Denver Broncos team that had a great quarterback in John Elway. That was the focal point of that offense, and it just they smashed them. And I look at the Chiefs, and I just kind of think with the 49ers being a more complete team, I do think they can come out late. But that said, if the Chiefs win this isn't like an upset or me being surprised. I totally could see the Chiefs winning this. And it again goes back to what I think. I don't know how this game's going to go. I really don't know how I can pick on this game because you just don't know.
I feel like this Chiefs team's a lot better than the Ravens team the 49ers lost to in New Orleans.
Well, it doesn't take too much to be better than that Ravens team. You had Joe Flacco as the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I don't think that he was the Super Bowl MVP either. Let's talk about...
You got to remember also, in that game, the 49ers defensive front was injured. They were playing the Ravens injured. There were several people on the line that had, tricep issues or shoulder injuries, and they were still playing on the front, and that's what allowed Flacco to do Flacco things. But please continue.
I was going to wrap this up and ask you, Kobe Bryant, death of Kobe on Sunday, I think the entire world has kind of like mourned that. I was going to give you a chance if you had any thoughts on that before I let you go.
It's funny. I have a funny take on Kobe. I'm not a big basketball fan. I never watched the NBA. I was a big Michael Jordan fan, just like everybody else was. The Bulls were my team because they had Jordan on there. So being an 80s kid, that's why you liked it. But the thing about Kobe was I never knew about Kobe, not from basketball. I remember him because he had that deal. He had Kobe Bryant's NBA courtside for the Nintendo 64. And somebody had that. I'm like, who the heck is Kobe Bryant? And that was how I found out about Kobe, was from his licensing deal. But Kobe did a lot for the game of basketball. I think he filled a void that was left over when Jordan was gone. I know they wanted Allen Iverson to kind of do it, but I really think Kobe took things to a whole new level. He kind of kept the NBA as a good marketing machine. And while I never was an NBA fan, when you watched Kobe, you knew you were going to get to see somebody at their physical peak, which to me, that's always impressive.
Patrick, I'm going to let you go. When the 49ers win the Super Bowl, am I going to get to talk to you?
I don't know. I think we had a nice little back and forth when I proved that I was right on the Antonio Brown trade. So I'll totally talk to you after that.
Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again to Patrick for jumping on the podcast with us. It's always good to talk to him. And for those of you that didn't know about the Antonio Brown situation from a year ago, I'm going to break it down really quickly before we end the podcast. So this is when Antonio Brown was having a little bit of trouble in Pittsburgh. I know, crazy, right? had a little bit of trouble in Pittsburgh, and we were talking about what this perfect spot for him to go was, and I had said San Francisco. It felt like the right move. You got Garoppolo, you got a new head coach. Antonio Brown's one of the best wide receivers in the game at that point. I thought that it was a match made in heaven. What I didn't know is Antonio Brown is a crazy person, and he would not only go to Oakland and do what crazy people do, he also would go to New England. And again, do what crazy people do. So Patrick was right when he said, I don't want this guy. And, maybe he knew a little bit more than I did. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he just didn't want the 49ers to give up assets to go get Antonio Brown. And it worked out. He was right, and I was wrong, and Antonio Brown is out of the league. And I think he just got off house arrest. Maybe not. I think that he's still running from the law. So that's going to do it for the show. We're going to talk about the Chiefs. We're going to break everything down tomorrow on Friday on a Football Friday. So you're going to want to tune into that. I'm going to give my final predictions on Super Bowl Sunday and everything else that goes around with it. Thank you again so much for listening. Please continue to send our content all around this great world. And we talked to Patrick a little bit about Kobe Bryant, and I've been saying it all week, that this week really, I think, reminds everybody to cherish the ones that you love and to remind them while they're still around how much they mean to you. So if you haven't done that this week, if that's not something that you have been able to do, it's almost time. Let's get that in there before the week's over. Go call your mom. Tell her how much you love her. I love you guys. Thanks. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.